Hi, lovelies. Welcome back to Vintage Mike Tales. I'm so glad you're here. Your love and support truly mean the world. Get comfy, relax, and let's dive into a story of love you never saw coming. New York had never felt this silent. The massive wooden doors of the church stood open, letting in the faint sounds of traffic, but inside the world felt frozen. Stained glass colors stretched across the pews like soft watercolor strokes, but no one dared to breathe. No one dared to move. Not when the bride still stood at the front of the aisle, bouquet trembling in her hands, veil slipping off her curls, her eyes glued to the door her groom had walked out of 30 minutes ago. He wasn't coming back. The whispers started again, soft and cutting and pity-filled, every sound a blade, and then Kenneth moved. He had been sitting in the second row, heart pounding so loudly he swore God himself could hear it. He had prayed the man would come back, not because he wanted him to, but because he couldn't stand the way. Grace looked standing up there alone. The woman he had loved since childhood was about to break into dust in front of all these people. He couldn't let her crumble alone. Kenneth stood and crossed the aisle before her mother could reach her, before anyone could touch her. His voice was gentle but firm as he stepped between Grace and the crowd. "Let's go," he whispered, offering his hand. Her fingers were cold, frozen almost, but she placed them into his slowly, as if every muscle in her body was too shocked to move. Her face didn't show tears yet. Only devastation stretched thin across her beautiful features, like glass about to shatter. He shielded her with his body as he walked her down the aisle. When someone reached for her arm, he pulled her closer. When someone whispered, "Poor girl," his jaw tightened so hard it hurt. When someone said she must have done something wrong, something in Kenneth's chest erupted like fire. He kept walking. Outside, the New York breeze rushed around them as he guided her carefully into his car. She stared ahead, expression blank, veil fluttering against her cheek. "Kenny," she finally whispered, voice cracked. "Where did he go?" He didn't answer. He couldn't, because any answer felt like a betrayal of the love he had carried for her for 20 years. He took her hand instead, and she broke. Her sob hit so suddenly that her body folded in on itself. He caught her before she could hit the seat, arms wrapping around her bridal gown as she clung to him like the wind would tear her away. "He left me," she cried into his chest. "He really left me." Kenneth closed his eyes. The pain in her voice sliced through him, but he held her tighter, letting her wet his shirt, letting her tremble, letting her pour every ounce of heartbreak into him. "I'm here," he murmured against her forehead. "I'm right here, Grace. He always had been. He always would be." He took her home. Her penthouse felt too big, too quiet, too painfully clean for someone whose entire future had just imploded. Grace didn't move after he led her inside. She just stood in the middle of her living room, bouquet still in her hand, veil slipping to the floor, dress heavy around her. "Kenny," she whispered, a small broken sound. I can't get this off." He stepped toward her slowly, like touching her too harshly might break her into pieces. His hands trembled as he reached for the buttons of her dress. He had imagined this moment 1,000 times in dreams, undressing her with worship and reverence and love, but not like this, never like this, not when she was shaking, not when her heart had been stabbed open. He unbuttoned the delicate row down her back, each tiny click sounding like grief. Her skin was warm beneath his fingertips, and he had to inhale slowly to keep himself steady. "I've got you," he whispered. Her head rested against his shoulder. He felt her breath hitch. He felt her tears soak into his collarbone. He removed her earrings, her necklace, her gloves. He wiped her mascara with a damp cloth, gentle enough to make her eyes flutter shut. He slid her out of the dress, covering her with his jacket when she shivered. All the while he fought the urge to fall apart with her. He laid her on the bed, pulled a blanket over her and sat beside her until her eyes finally closed from exhaustion. He did not leave. The first week was the worst. Grace alternated between anger, sadness, numbness, and a crushing disbelief that left her staring out windows for hours. Kenneth stayed by her side through all of it. He brought her food she barely touched. He drove her to her therapy appointments. He made her drink water. He convinced her to sleep when she fought it. When she finally admitted she couldn't return to Wall Street yet, that she felt like she had nothing left, that she didn't even know who she was outside her career and almost marriage. He held her through the confession. "This isn't the end of you," he whispered into her hair. "This is the beginning of you." She didn't believe him, but he did. He believed in her more than he had ever believed in anything. 3 weeks after the wedding that wasn't, she finally laughed. It was small, a weak exhale after he accidentally spilled tea on himself, but it was real and Kenneth's heart almost burst hearing it. That night, they shared a bottle of wine on her balcony overlooking Manhattan. The sky was purple, the city humming below them, and she leaned into his side like it was the most natural place in the world. "I don't know who I am anymore," she admitted softly. "Without the job, without the wedding, without the applause or the titles, I feel like," her voice cracked, "like I'm nothing. Grace." He turned her face to him gently. "You were someone long before Wall Street knew your name, and you're still someone now. You're still brilliant. You're still kind. You're still you." She looked at him with eyes full of disbelief and something else, something fragile and curious. "Why do you care so much?" she whispered. "Because I love you. Because I always have. Because I don't know how to exist in a world where I'm not protecting you." He swallowed the words. Instead he said, "Because you matter." She blinked tears away and leaned her forehead into his shoulder. The city lights painted her skin gold. Kenneth wrapped his arms around her, and she melted into him, every breath sinking with his. Minutes passed, maybe hours. At some point she reached for the wine again, giggling softly as she almost missed the glass. She was tipsy, warm and drowsy and emotional, in the way only wine could summon. She curled into him like a child seeking comfort. "You always make me feel safe, Kenny," she murmured, words slurring slightly. His breath caught. His heart almost stopped. He closed his eyes, pressing his chin gently against her hair, and let himself feel the moment. "I would give you my whole life if you asked," he thought. "Every piece of it. Every second. I would lay everything at your feet if it meant you would stay." But he didn't say any of that aloud. He just held her, rubbing small circles on her back, letting her fall asleep on his chest. And somewhere between her soft breaths and the quiet hush of New York below them, something shifted, dangerously and quietly. Something that had been buried for 20 years began to rise to the surface, and neither of them would be able to ignore it for much longer. The skyline of Manhattan, once so sharp and full of possibility, blurred through the rain-streaked windows of Grace's apartment. She had not slept in 3 nights. Her hands shook as she scrolled through her resignation email, eyes wide and chest tightening like it was trying to suffocate her. The Wall Street world she had dominated felt suddenly foreign and meaningless. Titles and bonuses and applause were all gone. All of it had vanished in the wake of her fiancé's betrayal and the hollow echo of a life she no longer recognized. Her chest heaved. Breath caught. Panic seized her like an invisible fist. She sank to the floor, knees tucked into her chest, and pressed trembling hands against her face. "Grace," Kenneth's voice was there instantly, soft and low and unwavering, as if he had always known this moment would come. He dropped to his knees beside her, hands on hers, warmth radiating through the tension. "Breathe with me," he murmured. 1, 2, 3. His chest pressed lightly to hers. "You are not alone, I am here." Tears streaked her face, mascara running like rivers over her cheeks. "I cannot," she gasped. "I cannot do this anymore. I do not know who I am, Kenny. I am nothing without it all. I am nothing." "You are not nothing," he said firmly, eyes locking onto hers. "You are Grace, that is enough. That has always been enough. You have survived more than anyone should, and you are still standing. Come on, let us get out of here." He helped her stand, steadying her as she leaned against him, shaky but willing to move. She had no destination, no plan, but Kenneth was all she needed. His presence was a lifeline, the only anchor she could cling to. "Where?" she whispered. "Somewhere the city will not matter. Somewhere you can breathe. Somewhere you can laugh again." He gave her a small, knowing smile. "Vegas," Grace blinked. "Vegas now." Her voice was incredulous but tinged with curiosity. The first spark she had felt in weeks, yes, neon. Lights, sunshine, chaos, no expectations. No Wall Street. Just freedom for a few days. He extended his hand, solid and grounding. "Come with me." Something about the absurdity of it made her laugh. A shaky, brittle sound at first, but then it grew. And for the first time in weeks, She let herself feel something besides loss and heartbreak. She nodded. The neon hum of Vegas wrapped around them the second they stepped onto the strip, a blur of heat and noise and possibility. Grace had not smiled in months, not really. But something about the chaos tugged at her lips. Maybe it was the freedom. Maybe it was the whiskey. Maybe it was the way Kenneth walked beside her, shoulder brushing hers like he had every right in the world to be that close. "Grace," he said, handing her another drink, "you are finally breathing again." She laughed, actually laughed, and the sound startled them both. "Maybe I am." They drifted in and out of bars, taking shots they had no business taking. Kenneth kept catching her when she bumped into tables, bumped into him, bumped into everything. She was warm and flushed and messy in the most human way. Months of pain loosened from her chest with every reckless step she took. "Look," she giggled, holding his hand and dragging him through a crowd of tourists wearing plastic feather boas. "You are supposed to enjoy Vegas, not brood like a lawyer on trial." "I do not brood," he said, though he absolutely did, and she poked his chest in response. "You brood beautifully." He choked on his drink, ears turning red. "You are very drunk." "I am, and you are cute," she hiccuped. "Do not tell anyone." He laughed. When was the last time she had heard him laugh like that? Like he was not holding the world on his back. They wandered beneath golden lights, Grace slipping off her heels halfway down the sidewalk. "These things are trying to kill me." He bent without a word, lifting her foot carefully. "You want a piggyback," she snorted. "No, I want ice cream. And maybe a new life. And maybe a bad decision, Grace." His voice softened, warning wrapped in affection. But she was already staring at him, really staring. Eyes warm and unfocused, but sincere. "Kenny," she whispered, stepping closer, fingers curling in the front of his shirt. "Let us wed tonight." He froze. "What? Let us wed?" She said again, louder this time, drunk courage turning her voice into honey. "I know a chapel. They are everywhere here. Pick one. I trust you." "Grace?" He cupped her cheeks, thumbs brushing her skin. "You are not thinking straight." She leaned into his palms like they were the only things holding her to the earth. "I'm thinking this, you, us, maybe we should do something wild. Just this once." He swallowed, chest rising and falling too quickly. "Baby," she murmured, eyes fluttering, "please." Kenneth broke. Not because she asked, because for 20 years he had been waiting for a universe where she said his name like that. "Okay," he whispered, voice shaking. "Okay, if you are sure." She grabbed his hand and tugged him toward the nearest chapel, lit with tacky angel lights. It should have looked ridiculous. It did not. Not with her beside him, barefoot and radiant, spinning under neon like she had rediscovered joy itself. Inside, everything felt unreal. Soft music, a priest who looked half asleep, Kenneth's hand shaking in hers, Grace swaying slightly, smiling like she had been starving for happiness, and finally found it. "Rings," she whispered. "We do not have rings." "Yes, we do." She dragged him outside to a street vendor selling cheap trinkets. She held up 2 thin copper bands. "Perfect. You deserve better." "I want these." She slid the smaller one onto her own finger, and then she took his hand, his big, warm, trembling hand, and pushed the other onto him. "See? Just like that. We are something. Something." The word lodged in his throat. Back inside the chapel, Kenneth dropped to one knee because even drunk, even terrified, even knowing this was insanity, he could not let her have anything less than the gesture she deserved. Her breath hitched. "Grace William," he said, voice thick, "marry me." She laughed, bright and tipsy and aching. Of course I will." Their vows came out slurred and messy and whispered. Her fingers tangled in his hair. His thumb traced circles on her waist. The priest mumbled something official, and then he kissed her. It was soft at first, then desperate. Years and decades of longing poured into a single moment. She kissed him back like she belonged to him, like he belonged to her, like they had been circling each other forever. The world blurred after that, her head on his shoulder while he carried her to the hotel. Her hands on his cheeks, whispering, "Kenny, do not let me fall." His voice breaking as he said, "Never." Then darkness. She woke in his hotel room slowly, head pounding and throat dry. Sunlight streaming through the blinds, Kenneth beside her, bare-chested, asleep, an arm around her waist like he had been holding her all night, because he could not bear to let go. Her heart pounded, memories crashing in like waves. The smoky bar, his hand at her back as she laughed into his chest, The sidewalk. Her bare feet on warm pavement. The ring's cheap copper gleaming under neon. Kenneth kneeling. Her saying yes. The vows slurred and emotional. The priest's smile. The kiss hungry and aching and full of 20 years she never saw. "Oh my God," she whispered, pressing both palms to her face. "No, no, no, no." She screamed into the pillow, trying to make sense of it. Kenneth stirred beside her, half awake, panic in his eyes. "We got married," she squeaked. "Kenneth, there was a priest and rings and your mouth." "Yes, I remember some of it." "You remember?" Her voice cracked. "Kenny, we got married in Vegas. Married." He rubbed the back of his neck. "I know," she froze. She wanted to laugh and cry and throw something at him. Her head fell into her hands. She slid to the edge of the bed, hugging her knees and trying to breathe. "Oh God, what did we do?" Her voice trembled between horror and disbelief. He reached for her, gentle and steady. "Grace, we can fix this. We can annul it. Whatever you need." Her heart raced so hard it felt bruised. Annulment, right, logical, clean, but something inside her whispered, "What if you do not want to?" And when she finally lifted her head, her voice came out small but clear enough to shift their universe forever. "Kenny, wait," he froze. "What if we do not fix it?" she whispered. "What if we stay married? Just for 1 year?" Kenneth went completely still. "Grace," his voice cracked, "do not play with this." "I'm not," she said. "I am scared. I am confused. I am lost. But maybe this makes sense. Maybe this helps us both." Her breath trembled. 1 year. As husband and wife. And then if it does not work, we walk away. "Grace," he whispered, "you have no idea what you are asking. I know exactly what I am asking." He blinked. 1 year. His heart skipped, every nerve in his body alert. "Just 1 year." "Yes." Her eyes met his, serious now under the soft sunlight. 1 year. We stay married, see where this goes. Kenneth's chest tightened. 1 year. A lifetime compressed into 12 months. The thought was terrifying and yet intoxicating. He could feel the pull, the slow, dangerous lure of finally holding her. Not as a friend, not as a protector, but as something else, something more. Something he had wanted for 20 years. And for the first time, Grace, beautiful, brilliant, and broken, looked at him with a softness and a trust and a desire that made his heart ache in ways he could not articulate. It was not just drunken bravado. It was not just a Vegas stunt. It was a beginning, a reckoning, a surrender. He nodded slowly, swallowing against the lump in his throat. 1 year, he said, voice low and reverent. 1 year, then we see. But Grace, his eyes searched hers, earnest and vulnerable. You do not have to do this for anyone but yourself. Her lips curled into a tiny, exhausted smile. I am doing it for me and maybe for us. The room felt charged and heavy with possibility. Outside, the Vegas sun rose, neon signs fading in the morning light. But inside, something else had risen. A promise, unspoken but palpable, hung in the air. 1 year, that was all they had. But it was enough. For now, it was more than enough. Kenneth reached for her hand, entwining fingers like they had never been separated. Her thumb brushed over his knuckles in silent understanding. And in that touch, in that quiet grounding, they found something neither had dared hope for after so much heartbreak. A beginning that might just change everything. Moving in together had been both exhilarating and terrifying. The apartment smelled faintly of Kenneth's cologne, and the lingering scent of fresh paint from Grace's creative attempts at redecorating. Boxes sat stacked in corners, half unpacked, filled with remnants of lives that once existed separately. Now they were colliding, crashing into each other, like two worlds that had always belonged together but had never met in the right way until now. Kenneth's hands were everywhere, almost unconsciously. He brushed crumbs off her counter, rearranged books she had stacked crookedly, kissed her forehead as she flitted past him. Grace caught him staring more than once, lingering glances as she rearranged the sofa in the bedroom. The sunlight hitting her skin just right, the soft way she chewed her lip when she was thinking. Those looks were not just friendship anymore. They were loaded, electric, and undeniable. The next morning, Grace padded into the kitchen in Kenneth's oversized t-shirt, because her clothes were still in boxes, and found him standing barefoot by the stove. Hair messy, glasses slipping down his nose as he read the back of a coffee bag, like it was a legal document. He looked up and froze, then blinked, then swallowed. She tugged the hem of the t-shirt down instinctively. My clothes are still packed, right, his voice cracked. I figured. She laughed softly. You don't have to look away, Kenny. I'm trying to be decent, he muttered, ears turning red. And from that tiny moment the shift began. Quiet, subtle, inevitable. One night she tried painting again for the first time in years. The canvas looked terrible, smeared and chaotic, but at least it felt like something. Paint dotted her cheek, and when she walked into the living room to show him, Kenneth looked up from the couch and inhaled sharply. Grace, you've got a... He reached for her face before thinking, his thumb brushing her cheekbone. Warm, careful, reverent, she stilled. He stilled, a breath suspended between them like fine thread. Then he pulled back abruptly. Sorry, I should have. It's fine, she whispered. But it wasn't fine. It was electric. As the weeks turned into months, a fragile rhythm formed. She rediscovered herself, not the version Wall Street molded. The version she buried. She baked at odd hours, took long, slow walks, read novels late into the night, painted messy emotions across canvas, and Kenneth kept showing up. He left tiny poems hidden around the apartment, tucked into drawers, inside the cereal box under her mug. He never admitted they were for her, but Grace knew it was, and she knew the quiet ache behind each carefully chosen word. She caught him staring sometimes, quick glances that he thought she didn't notice, the kind that lingered a little too long, the kind that said everything he never allowed himself to say. One night rain hammered the windows loud and relentless. Grace shot awake, heart racing, breath uneven, the same nightmare she had been having for months. A hand touched her shoulder gently. Grace, Kenneth whispered, voice thick with sleep. It's just a storm. She turned toward him without thinking, burying her face in his chest. He froze only for a second before wrapping his arms around her, pulling her close in a way that felt instinctive, practiced, like he had been holding her in dreams long before now. You're safe, he murmured. I'm right here. His thumb brushed small circles along her spine, a soft, grounding rhythm. She melted into him, letting her walls loosen, letting someone else be strong for once. When she finally stopped trembling, she whispered, I don't know who I'm becoming. His breath warmed her hair. Someone real. She looked up at him through the dim light. Kenny, what are we doing? For a moment, neither moved. Then he said quietly, whatever you need us to. They didn't kiss, but it was the closest they had ever come. Throughout the afternoon, the tension only thickened. He brushed past her in the hallway, his hand grazing her hip. She handed him a canvas, her fingers lingering on his wrist. Every accidental touch felt intentional. Every shared breath felt like a promise. Neither of them said out loud. By dinner, she was exhausted, emotionally, not physically. Kenneth walked in holding 2 mugs of tea. You didn't eat lunch, he said softly. Again, she sighed. I wasn't hungry. That's not good enough, he murmured, handing her the cup. You have to take care of yourself. The words landed wrong, too sharp, too familiar to another man who once told her what to do. Grace stiffened. I don't need you monitoring me. His jaw twitched. Grace, I'm not. You're hovering, she snapped. You do it all the time. Kenneth froze. I'm trying to help. By treating me like I'm going to fall apart every second? She set the cup down hard. I'm not broken. I know that. His voice remained steady, but the hurt flickered in his eyes. But you've been through hell. I'm allowed to care. Maybe I don't want you to care that much. Silence cracked between them. He swallowed. Then why did you ask me to stay married to you for a year? Her breath trembled. She opened her mouth, closed it, opened it again. Because I didn't want to be alone. That's it, he whispered. Just convenience? She flinched. Kenny, Grace, just say it. Say I'm convenient. Heat rose in her face, anger and guilt tangled. Why are you making this about your feelings? I'm the one who got left at the altar. I'm the one who had to rebuild my entire life. Yeah, he said sharply, and I've been right here rebuilding with you. She stared at him, chest heaving. And now what? You want a prize for loyalty? His face fell like she had slapped him. She regretted it instantly. Kenneth, I didn't mean. No, he said quietly, you did. She took a step toward him. I'm scared. That's all. I'm scared of needing you. He didn't look away. And I'm terrified of losing you. Her breath caught. He exhaled shakily, voice raw. I loved you through every boyfriend, every heartbreak. Every moment you ran to me with stories about men who never deserved you. And now you're finally here, and all I can think is, 1 year isn't enough. It'll never be enough. Her eyes burned. You can't say things like that. Why? He whispered. Because you'll feel something? The pain in his voice cracked something open in her. I do feel something, she whispered back, and it terrifies me. The room stilled. Before either of them could speak again, she turned abruptly and walked toward the bedroom, needing air, space, anything. She grabbed the doorknob, then froze, his reflection in the hallway mirror, her own breathing, the unbearable distance in the few feet between them. Kenneth? Her voice shook. He lifted his head. I don't want to fight, she whispered. The tension in his shoulders softened. He took one step toward her, then another, and another. When he reached her, he didn't touch her. He just stood there, close enough that his breath brushed her cheek. Grace, he said softly, tell me what you're feeling. The truth. She inhaled shakily. I don't know how to love someone without being afraid they'll leave. He closed his eyes for a moment as if steadying himself. I'm not him. I know, she whispered. Then look at me, she did. He cupped her face gently, so gently she nearly melted. His thumb brushed her cheek, slow and reverent. You don't have to be afraid with me, he murmured. Not ever. Her breath trembled. Kenneth. And then he did something he had never done before. He spoke without caution, without restraint. I'm in love with you, he said quietly. I've been in love with you since we were kids. Since before you knew what you wanted from life, since before I knew how deep this would go. 20 years, Grace. I've loved you for 20 years. The confession hit her like a wave. Her lips parted. Kenny. He shook his head. Let me finish. She nodded, tears gathering. I didn't tell you because I didn't want to lose you. I didn't tell you because you were happy, and then you weren't. And all I wanted was to take your pain and carry it for you. Not because I expect anything back. Not because I want a prize, because it's you. And you're the only thing that's ever made sense in my entire damn life. A tear slid down her cheek. He caught it with his thumb. I don't deserve that, she whispered. Yes, he murmured, you do. You deserve everything. She trembled. And what if I break your heart? He stepped closer. Then it'll be the honor of my life to have had you long enough for you to break it. Her breath hitched. Her hands rose almost involuntarily, resting on his chest. Kenneth. He leaned in slowly, giving her every chance to pull away. Tell me to stop, he whispered. She didn't. Instead, she whispered, kiss me. He did. The kiss wasn't tentative this time. It was years of longing igniting at once, hungry, deep, desperate, sacred. His hand slid into her hair, her fingers curled into his shirt, pulling him closer, their breaths merging, their bodies aligning like they had always belonged together. They stumbled into the bedroom, mouths never parting. His hands explored her slowly, reverently, as if memorizing her. She tugged his shirt off. He lifted her into his arms. She gasped softly when his lips traced down her neck, her collarbone, her shoulder. Kenny, she breathed. He froze, forehead against her skin. Tell me you want this, he whispered. Tell me it's not just fear or comfort or... She cupped his face firmly. I want you, not because I'm scared, not because I need a distraction, but because it's you. It's always been you. Desire flared in his eyes, raw and vulnerable and overwhelming. He kissed her again, slower this time, deeper. His hands slid along her curves, her fingers tangled in his hair. Clothes fell away piece by piece, soft thuds on the floor. When he laid her on the bed, he paused, hovering over her, eyes filled with something that stole her breath. Grace, he murmured, I've dreamed of you for half my life. She pulled him down gently, then stopped dreaming. They made love tenderly at first, like discovering a language they had always spoken, but never dared to voice. Every touch was reverent, every kiss a confession. He worshipped her slowly, deeply, fully. She touched him like she was learning him all over again. Then it shifted, heat rising, breaths quickening, bodies moving in perfect, wordless rhythm. Kenneth, she gasped, fingers clutching his shoulders. Don't stop. I won't, he whispered into her neck. I promise. And he didn't. Afterward, they lay tangled in the sheets, her head on his chest, his arm wrapped firmly around her waist, as if he feared she might drift away. Kenny, she whispered into the quiet. Yeah. She traced a slow circle over his heart. 1 year might not be enough. His breath caught. He pulled her closer, pressed his lips to her forehead, and whispered, "It'll never be enough." 1 year had started as a reckless experiment, a whim born from tequila and desperation. But it had become everything they had ever wanted. And neither of them would ever let it go. Grace woke before him. The early morning light slipped through the curtains, soft and warm, painting Kenneth's bare shoulders in gold. His arm was draped around her waist, his breath steady against her neck. Last night lingered on her skin, his touch, his voice. The way he whispered her name like it was something sacred. She turned slightly, watching him, beautiful in a way only a man who loves deeply could be. Vulnerability softened all the sharp lines of his normally composed face. He stirred, eyes blinking open. "Morning," he murmured, voice husky with sleep. Her breath caught. "Hi." A slow smile curved his lips. "You're staring. You were peaceful," she whispered. "I'm peaceful because of you." Heat crept into her chest, warm and terrifying. She looked away too quickly, and he noticed because he always noticed. "What's wrong?" he asked gently. "Nothing," she said. She started to shift out of his arms, but he sat up, pulling her back. "Grace," his voice softened. "Don't run." She stilled, breathing uneven. "I'm not running." "You are," he whispered. "You always do when you're scared." She swallowed. "Kenny, what if last night was a mistake?" His expression didn't flinch, but the pain flashed through his eyes like lightning. "A mistake," he repeated quietly. "I didn't mean it like that," she said quickly. He got out of bed, grabbing his shirt, pulling it on with hands that weren't as steady as he wanted them to be. "Kenneth, wait!" "No, it's fine." His voice was controlled but clipped. "I should make breakfast." "Kenny, please." He didn't look back. The silence between them during breakfast was unbearable. Grace pushed eggs around her plate without eating. Kenneth washed the same mug twice. Their eyes avoided each other. Like contact would set off an explosion they weren't ready to face. Finally, Grace stood abruptly. "This is stupid." Kenneth looked up, startled. "We're acting like strangers," she said, voice trembling. "After everything that happened, after everything we've shared, you're pretending nothing's wrong and I'm pretending I'm okay. And neither of those things is true." He inhaled slowly. "Then tell me what is true, Grace. Because I can't keep guessing what you need." Her throat tightened. "I'm scared." "Of me?" "No," she said instantly. "Of losing you." His jaw softened. "I don't know how to do this," she whispered, voice cracking. "Every time I care, I lose. Every time I let myself hope, it collapses. I'm afraid that if I let myself fall for you fully, I'll wake up one day and you won't be here." He came toward her, slow, cautious, as if approaching something fragile. "I'm not going anywhere," he said. "You don't know that," she whispered. "I do," he answered quietly, "because I've already survived 20 years without you. I know what that emptiness feels like. And now that I have you, Grace, I'm never going back to that." Her breath trembled. "Kenny. And last night," he said softly. "It wasn't a mistake. It was the best thing that's ever happened to me." Her eyes burned. He exhaled. "But you woke up this morning terrified, and that's okay. We can go slow if you want. We can stop if you want. But don't call what we shared a mistake." Her voice dropped to a whisper. "I'm sorry." He stepped even closer, cupping her face with both hands. "Don't be sorry. Just tell me the truth." She met his eyes, raw and unguarded. "The truth is, I'm falling deeply in love with you." His breath stopped. "And it's happening fast," she whispered. "And it's overwhelming. And I feel like I'm losing control." He brushed his thumb over her cheek. "Then let me catch you." She broke, quiet tears slipping as she leaned into him. He held her tight, arms wrapping around her as if anchoring her to the earth. "I'm right here," he murmured in her hair. "You're not alone. Not anymore." They stood like that for a long, still moment, two hearts that had waited 2 decades for permission to finally collide. The days that followed were soft, real tender. They cooked together, laughed over burnt pancakes, shared quiet nights on the sofa watching old movies. The walls between them, once ironclad, melted with each sunrise. One evening they sat on the fire escape. He read poetry aloud while she rested her head on his shoulder. "You always sound like you're talking to someone when you read," she teased. He paused. "I was." Her brow rose. "For 20 years?" He nodded softly. "I just didn't think I'd ever get to tell her." She kissed his jaw, slow and reverent. But intimacy did not erase fear. It revealed it. One night, during a thunderstorm that rattled the windows, Grace woke with a start, heart pounding, breath uneven. Memories of being left at the altar flashed through her mind. Shame, humiliation, fear of never being enough. Kenneth bolted upright at her gasp. "Grace, hey, it's okay." He gathered her in his arms instantly. "You're safe. I've got you." She clung to him, shaking. "You won't leave. You won't disappear." He kissed her forehead, her cheeks, the crown of her head. "Never. Not in this lifetime. Not in any." She sobbed into him, exhausted, vulnerable, trusting him with pieces of her she had never let anyone hold. He stayed awake until she drifted off again, his fingers tracing soothing circles on her back. "Forever," he whispered into her hair. "You're mine forever." Weeks turned into months. Their love deepened, fierce, tender, passionate. And then, one evening, she found him on the balcony holding a small velvet box. Her heart stopped. "Kenny," she whispered. He turned, startled, not expecting her yet. "It's not what you think," he said quickly, swallowing. "I was practicing." "Practicing," she repeated. He exhaled. "The vow renewal. I wanted it to be perfect." Her breath caught. "You're planning it." "I want to marry you," he said simply. "Really marry you, sober, fully, intentionally. If you'll have me." Grace walked toward him slowly, tears gathering. "Kenneth." He opened the box. Inside was a simple gold band, elegant, timeless, completely her. "I want to spend every day of my life loving you," he said quietly. "Not because we're bound by some drunken mistake. Not because of a deal, not because of a year. But because you're the love of my life." A tear escaped down her cheek. "I'm scared," she whispered again. "So am I," he admitted. "But I'd rather be terrified with you than safe without you." She let out a shuddering breath. He took her hand. "Grace, will you renew our vows? Will you let this be real?" She pressed her forehead to his. "Yes," she breathed. "God, yes." Kenneth pulled her into his arms, kissing her like the moment he'd waited for all his life. The vow renewal was small, just them. A quiet rooftop garden, twinkle lights, and a minister who didn't look bewildered this time. Grace wore a simple white silk dress. Kenneth wore a navy suit, eyes soft and shining. He took her hands. "I've loved you for 20 years," he said, "but today I promise to spend the next 20 proving it." Her voice shook. "And I promise," she whispered, "to stop running, to trust your love, to choose you every day." They kissed, slow, deep, intentional. A real marriage, born not from drunkenness or fear, but devotion. A year later, Kenneth held their baby boy, tiny, perfect, asleep against his chest. Grace stood in the doorway, hair messy, eyes soft with wonder. She watched him sway gently, humming, love pouring out of him like light. "Kenny," she whispered. He looked up. She smiled, tears filling her eyes. "I finally figured out who I am." He walked toward her, baby still in his arms. "Who?" She touched his cheek tenderly. "Yours." He kissed her, slow, grateful, reverent. And between them their son slept, safe in the arms of the love that was always meant to be. Their love journey had started as a reckless experiment, a whim born from tequila and desperation. But it had become everything they had ever wanted. Thank you so much for joining me today. I hope you enjoyed this story as much as I loved sharing it. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe so you never miss a tale. Until next time, keep hope alive and your hearts open. This is Vintage Mike Tales.